This podcast is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
So it's been 2 wins, 2 losses and a postponement in the last month or so. Does this change how we think of Forest's chances this season? Welcome to the Forest Ramble for November. I'm glad to be joined, as ever, by my good, close personal acquaintance, the Maradona in the Midlands. Hi.
Hello.
And by Stephen Topless. Hello.
Hello.
And before we get going, obviously, there's only one place to start, which is the victory against Derby County yesterday, at the time of recording yesterday. You may have heard the mini-match report that I did with Baz, where we're reflecting upon various bits of the match. And here are some of the highlights.
Our style of play for that game was we were going to try and press them quite high up the pitch, which is exactly what we did. One thing we have to say about the goal, the way Graben took it was absolutely fantastic.
There's never any doubt, was there?
No, but he had so little time to actually react and place it, and he did it perfectly.
But in his post-match interview with Sky, he did say, I had just a minute there to think about what I wanted to do. So that probably says something about his instincts as a finisher.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's what we always said. He's that kind of player. He's a poacher.
A couple of moments that had a minor controversy from the referee. The one that everyone's going to talk about is the Tom Lawrence should it have been a red card incident. Obviously, seeing it in real time without the benefit of replays, what was your take on it as it happened?
As it happened, I thought at the time it should have been a red.
The argument, of course, is that did Watson and Worrell foul Lawrence in the lead up to that? And if Watson had fouled him, should Watson have had a second yellow? There's a whole argument there. So actually, I think on balance, a yellow was. I can understand why that was a reasonable decision from the ref. However, you won't like the replays. The other moment, which didn't have that much of a bearing on the final result in the end, but probably caused you to stand up and scream a lot at the time. Right towards the end, Lewis Graben showed amazing strength to hold off, I think it was Bielik, and then he did a little flicked pass to Tiago Silva, who would have been running through, who's still in his own half, but we know that he's fast, and we know that there was no defenders between him and the goal. I bet you were a bit annoyed about that.
Yes, I think the entire ground was on its feet, shouting at the referee for that one. It's difficult for a referee; they have to kind of predict and make a call on it. I guess I would say the midfield three. It was one of those games where when they were on their game, all three of them were absolutely magnificent. Yeah. Yates really wanted a goal. The way he was bursting forwards, he wasn't really playing as a holding player. It was a 4-1-4-1 for the most part, wasn't it?
Silva,
obviously, he was at the heart of everything attacking, and then Watson, well, I keep saying this about Watson over and over again, he just held everything together. The reaction of the players at the end of the game was, you can just see, this is a proper side, a team that really wants to work together and wants to do it for us. The way, every single game now, where I sit, in the Bridgeford, sort of near the halfway line, Matty Cash, as soon as the final whistle goes, he runs over in front of us, because obviously he's been to the touchline on the right hand side, and he runs over in front of us and gives it everything.
Yeah.
Ryan Yates, obviously, it means so much to him. You could see that. And then I was saying, when they were being interviewed by Sky, Joe Worrell and Lewis Graben, you could. As soon as the interview finished, they just ran away from the interview. They legged it to come over and celebrate with the fans. It just means so much to them. It's really good to see.
Stephen, obviously you were at the match. I know that you enjoyed the atmosphere, you enjoyed the aftermath, you enjoyed the match itself. Tell us a little bit about what it was like being there.
Well, as always with Derby games, it was a big atmosphere, and it was. You know, the anticipation, it was all there before kick-off, and that translated into the game. You also had the fantastic display in the Trent End with the memorial things and the Nottingham banners, so that was, really good to see. As for the game itself, it was kind of, as you expect from a Derby game, had that scrappiness to it and that little bit of an edge.
But I think it wasn't low quality, though. There was still some good play, I thought.
There was, yeah. I wouldn't say it was completely free-flowing at times. But it wasn't a complete bore fest either, with teams just just going in physical on each other. There was a good mix of both, really. And from Forest's point of view, I think they were, on the day, the better team. They shaded it in terms of chances created. The goal might have come from a mistake, but nevertheless, Forest put Derby in that position with high pressing and good tactical play. And
we're going to come back and talk about that goal and about Grabban in a sec. Now, one of the things you did mention about kind of the scrappy nature of derbies, in our match report there, Baz and I were talking about should Tom Lawrence have had a red card and the ins and outs of that, but what we didn't really discuss actually was Ryan Yates in the first half. Now, bearing in mind that a player actually went off injured as a result of Yates's challenge, was he a bit lucky not to get a yellow card?
I thought he was, yeah. I was expecting the ref to...
Looking at it on telly, when they showed it in the highlights package, rather than watching it at the time, you kind of realised that his standing foot slipped from underneath him. But as we discussed with... on so many occasions recently, and with Andre Gomez's injury as well, actually you don't have to be making a malicious challenge to make a dangerous one.
Yeah, and I suppose that's where the referees have a big decision to make, because going back to that Andre Gomez thing, you could look at that entire incident and think Son shouldn't have been sent off, because technically he didn't do anything, reckless on the player himself. The reason the player was injured is because of a freak accident and a freak fall as a result of an earlier challenge. So from Ryan Yates' point of view, that tackle in real time did look, quite a reckless one. As you say there, if it's where his foot has slipped and it's made the tackle look worse or be worse than what it was initially, then that's probably where the referee has some decisions to make. But I do think Yates was fortunate to get away with that one.
And Maradona the Midlands last night on Quest's highlights, the panel there was saying that actually, and Tony Poulis was saying, actually, you know what, Yates should have been a yellow and Lawrence should have been a red.
Yeah, because the Lawrence one was worse. It looked like he could avoid that, and he did sort of seem to put his weight down on.
Yeah, so I think that there's something talking about challenges there, and this isn't something I particularly want to dwell on because obviously it's been done to death in the mainstream media since the Gomez injury. But what's interesting is that Son, when he made his tackle on Gomez, he wasn't going for the ball. He was doing a taking one for the team kind of thing where he's deliberately trying to trip him up. And we see that happen every week. I mean, Jack Robinson is the master of that in the Forest squad. And he's got the yellow card quotient to prove it. Whereas Yates was going for the ball. Lawrence, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because the ball was running away from him. And actually, those are the ones which are often the most dangerous tackles, because the ball's running away, so therefore you're not in control at the moment you go into the challenge. And I mean, Yuri Ribeiro was a very lucky boy not to get an injury from that, I think.
He definitely was. It could be described as a leg breaker.
That's exactly how I described it at the time.
But thankfully he doesn't seem to be too seriously injured.
Okay, so other themes that I thought that came out of the match. I mean, we talked a fair amount about Tiago Silva, and Stephen, I know that you particularly wanted to make some mention of Tiago, not just in yesterday's match, but also over the last few games.
For me, he's improving with every game at the moment. He looks like he's settled into English football and into this Forest team, and in particular against Derby, he was excellent and deserved fully the Man of the Match award. But he was also very good at Luton last week. He gives you the player who is very, very similar to in a lot of ways is João Carvalho. But I don't think you can play both of them at the same time. I think you do lose that little bit of competitive.
I'm just going to interrupt you there. What is it you think that makes Tiago and João Carvalho similar?
They're very good technicians on the ball.
Because I would argue that actually they're very different types of players. And speaking on behalf of Baz as well, we had this conversation yesterday off air, that they are both very good technical players. But I would also say that Silva's probably better in terms of bringing the ball out and running with the ball and moving with the ball, whereas Carvalho, he's got good skill on the ball, but the thing that sets him apart is his ability to pick a pass that no one else can see.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest compliment I can pay Silva is that people aren't talking about Carvalho as much anymore, sort of screaming out for having him in the team. When he first came in, and I first saw him in the pre-season games, I thought he might be another one of those lightweight Portuguese or Greek players we've sort of brought in the last couple of seasons, and I wasn't that impressed, to be honest with you, but he's got better and better, and he's got that ability that Carvalho has to pick a pass, and he's good on the ball and everything, but he's also willing to work and get his tackles in and put his foot in and close down. And so in my mind, a few weeks ago, if you'd asked me, I would have said put Silva in the away games and maybe Carvalho in the home games, where you just need a little pass threading through and you need to be a bit more solid away from home. But he's improving so much now that he's sort of making it difficult to even make a case for Carvalho to come into the team for home games.
Does it make a difference, Stephen, that Carvalho cost 13 million pounds and Tiago Silva cost, what was it, 2 million?
Yeah, I think that price tag it will always sit on Carvalho's head, rightly or wrongly, in some people's eyes. I look at what Silva gives you that Carvalho doesn't, which is probably that slightly more competitive edge, in that Silva will put his foot in. If he loses a ball, he'll chase it and he'll tackle, and he's prepared to do a bit more of the dirty work in that midfield. So he brings really good qualities in terms of his technical ability, but also he's prepared to get in and scrap and compete when he needs to.
With regard to the price tag, I think we have to start to admit now that we did overpay for Carvalho. He hasn't really shown enough to justify being a £13 million player. He shows glimpses of it here and there. He'll score a spectacular goal. He'll set up somebody, but it's fleeting. For that sort of price tag, you want somebody who's doing that every single day.
But that's not his fault, is it?
It's not his fault, but it's just the fact that we've probably overpaid for him. Looking at his value now, we'd be lucky to get £7 or £8 million for him.
Okay, but which is still a sizable amount of money.
But on the reverse, we probably underpaid for Silva.
Yeah.
And he's probably worth similar sort of money now.
And I suspect that some of that is also to do with age. Carvalho is, a player who was 21 years old with huge amounts of potential, and that's the kind of thing where you can add an extra zero onto the price tag. Yeah. Whereas Silva is obviously, he's played a serious amount of first-team matches before he's come to Forest. He's got that bit of experience, and it's like, well, it hasn't quite worked out for him at this club or at that club, so he's moving on, which I guess takes a zero off, conversely. Certainly I think that both will play a part this season. And what's interesting, though, is that I think the way the team has been set up in the last two matches is particularly noticeable against Derby yesterday. So although we're still playing the 4-1-4-1 formation, it was also the case that with Watson doing his anchorman role, but Yates providing the legs but not having the technical ability, that put the emphasis upon Silva in the number 10 role to actually have that bit of freedom, to be able to run with the ball, to be able to find the channels, to be able to use his skill to bamboozle the Derby defenders. And I thought that was something that he did in a way that Carvalho wouldn't have been able to do in that formation and with those personnel around him. I wonder... So going back to another one of the themes of the last month, I wonder if that's going to change slightly when Samba Sow and or Alpha Semedo in the team, because that might actually, the fact that they are very good at running with the ball may actually free up more opportunities for Carvalho to kind of do his type of technical play.
Yeah, maybe. The Samba Sow does dominate that whole midfield area when he plays. It does free up a huge track to the pitch for a creative player like that. Similarly with Semedo, I don't think he's as good as a holding player as Sow is. For me, he's sort of competing with Carvalho and Silva now for that third midfield role, the more attacking one. When Sow's fit and Watson are fit. But they all got their own different sort of abilities. Semedo's got a bit more physicality about him, as well as having the creative side.
And obviously, I mentioned about Ryan Yates coming back. After the whole match, the thing that was interesting about that whole match with regard to Tiago Silva was that he started off playing as one of the two deep-lying midfielders, and he started off, I thought in the first 10 minutes he was absolutely outstanding, and then he got a stupid booking for a late challenge that he didn't need to make, and after that I think he was a bit scared, to be honest. And then it was only when he moved further forward with the introduction of Ryan Yates that Silva started looking like someone who could orchestrate things again a little bit. Now, Ryan Yates, as we discussed, doesn't necessarily have the technical ability, but he is one of those, archetypal 110%ers, which actually creates space and time for those around him because he's doing a lot of dirty work, a lot of which won't actually be noticed.
Yeah, I mean, just through his energy, there's a lot of chaos in the midfield when he's playing, and that creates opportunity as well.
Good chaos.
Yeah, good chaos. He just sort of goes around and it disrupts the other team. And to be honest, I'd forgotten about Ryan Yates up until he came back into the team after the international break, because I couldn't see how he could get it back into the team with people like Bostock in reserve as well, and Semedo.
I've forgotten about Bostock.
Yeah, I mean, I can't see him playing a big part now if he couldn't get into the team with Semedo and Sow injured.
But he's not even been on the bench, so is he carrying it in? We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, I thought he was a bit, and we might touch on this later, he was a bit unfairly criticised after the Wigan game. I think it went a bit over the top, but the criticism of both him and Mir. But I was surprised that he wasn't back in the team for the whole game, and now not having sort of made an appearance again in matches since.
Well, he's not been in the 18 since, so you do wonder if maybe fitness is an issue or there's something else going on there. But it could also be, we know so far that Lamouchi, he will pick the best team and the best squad for every individual match. So maybe he just doesn't feel that Bostock's got the oomph to be able to compete regularly in the Championship.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. He does offer something else. He's got that passing ability, sort of long-range passing that the other midfield players maybe don't have. But, I can't see him playing a big part now.
Hello to our listeners in the United States, and thanks for listening to the Forest Ramble. If you are one of the many sports fans who like to place a bet, then check out this offer from MyBookie. This is the premier place to bet on your favourite sports every weekend, whether you are into the NFL, Premier League or European football, hockey or Major League, or any other sports. The best part is, if you join right now using the code LATEFEES, you put in $2,000 and they will give you $1,000. Use the promo code LATEFEES to activate the offer. That's LATEFEES for our US listeners to double your stake. Visit mybookie.ag today to take advantage of this offer and to view the all-important terms and conditions. You play, you win, you get paid.
So, Stephen, I've got a theory here. So, bearing in mind that Watson has obviously been absolutely outstanding playing as he's we called him the Ginger Fernandinho earlier in the season, and he's doing that role so excellently. But I'm wondering if, should Watson get injured or as a longer-term succession plan, I'm wondering if maybe it could be that we see Yates move into that anchorman role and allowing a Samba Sow to kind of be the leggy midfielder sort of as a long-term succession plan. What do you think?
I can see where that would come from, and it's one of the reasons why I'm really interested to see what Lamouchi does with Ryan Yates. He's already shown he's not afraid to give Forest prospects a go in the team. You look at Joe Worrell. I don't think many people would have put him down as to be anywhere near the starting 11 for the first game of the season, but he was in and he's not looked back since, and he's really come on. So it's the same sort of thing with Yates. Will Yates develop under Lamouchi? Will Lamouchi mould him into a certain kind of player? I think that anchor role might work for him. The only thing is, I don't think his passing right now is at the same level as Ben Watson's. There's time for it to improve, but Ben Watson does. He comes and he calls for the ball, he looks for the ball in that sort of almost quarterback pivot position. And I don't think that Yates quite has the same passing ability to really play that same role.
Equally, Watson doesn't have to spread it around so much, because his role means that he will drop deep between the centre halves, he will pass to the centre halves or the full-backs, or give it to one of the running midfielders and let them do the work. So I'm wondering if, that's why in my mind I'm thinking that Yates would be a better contender for that than a Sow or even a Semedo. Now, obviously, we've not got Semedo long-term, so that could potentially have some impact upon that. But that means that if Yates is in a position to do the simple stuff, it enables the other guys to do their thing a bit more effectively.
Oh, definitely, yeah. And I think that it is. You still need a bit of composure in that position to know where the pass is and just to use the ball intelligently. So, yeah, hopefully Yates can continue to work on his passing game. I don't think it's all that bad, to be honest with you, but just needs a little bit of refining. And yeah, there's no reason why you couldn't drop back and play a position like that.
Okay. I mean, you mentioned about sort of the academy players, the Forest players who are in the team. This is something we will definitely come back to a little bit later, because I think that there's a real sense of belief that comes through from those players. But in the meantime, you did mention as well about the fact that we didn't necessarily see Worrell being first choice centre half, and he's played pretty much every match, hasn't he? So one thing that, just as a little aside, is we have seen Alex Milosevic leave the City Ground in the last month, which came as a bit of a surprise to the fans, and it seems to come as a bit of a surprise to the journalists as well.
Yeah, I guess the reason being that you don't see international footballers under contract suddenly be released like that very often. Okay, he wasn't playing very much at all, but he showed his worth last season, and he would have thought he would have had a value to the club.
And just as a flashback, you did say in the summer, in our pre-season preview, that actually you could see Milosevic being sold because he is an international footballer, he has got good experience, and therefore we might be able to get some money back for him.
That's so strategically we've sort of fallen down a little bit there. Obviously, they didn't. The higher ups in the club maybe didn't consider that he'd be so far frozen out of the team. But it's just a little. It's over that last Christmas and the last couple of windows, we've just maybe not planned it brilliantly.
Well,
there was a whole Worrell recall clause which we didn't activate, which meant we had to go out and buy what's his name, Benuan, and then Milosevic signed as well. So
I think that's something that's really, really crucial here, is that we didn't have any fit centre-halves, so Forest had to go out and sign Benuan and Milosevic. Milosevic isn't going to play there and has got in the squad, I think, twice in the season so far. So in that sense, you can understand him moving on. Now, it's out of the transfer window, so they have to release him. They can't sell him.
Yeah. I think the fact that we got him on a free transfer maybe meant there was some sort of gentleman's agreement there. So I didn't cost you any money there, so you're not really losing out on it. And they would have thought, well, we're saving the wages for a few months anyway.
But the reaction of Sabri Lamouchi when he was asked about it was quite telling.
Yeah, he didn't sound happy at all.
Is that because he wasn't happy at Milosevic, or because he wasn't happy that Milosevic has gone?
I think both. As a manager, he'll have wanted options there. Managers are fairly selfish where they want as many good players as possible, I suppose.
Now, mentioning no names, okay? We're not some kind of gossip outlet, but there was a bit of kerfuffle on the old social media about Alex Milosevic, with the player himself wading into the argument just after the news emerged that he was released, because obviously some people do have a habit of getting 2 and 2 and making 5. It was interesting that, from the outside looking in, Milosevic was signed, he played a few games, he looked good, but then was mysteriously dropped from the squad under O'Neill and then hasn't figured under Lamouchi. Now, some people decided that that's because he'd had some kind of falling out with the club. I guess we'll never know, but it's very unusual to see players themselves wading in such a strong fashion. Usually they tend to keep their gob shut, don't they?
Yeah, and I do kind of welcome it to a degree, because it's very easy with social media for the fans to get in a frenzy over nothing, or Chinese whispers start going around and these rumours, people start presenting rumours as facts, and it really does misrepresent players and misrepresent situations that are going on. So for Milosevic, I've got the tweet here. He says,
if you could exclude the language, please.
I will filter it. But he says, talking about a player who barely missed a training session, who never had a fine for coming late or even forgetting stuff on the pitch. I've been reading some of your tweets, and I've never seen so much. Normally I don't care, but you try to put fake stuff out about a lot of players.
This is where apart from being our social media correspondent, you're also our journalistic correspondent. Interestingly, we've moved to a new form of journalism that's kind of with The Athletic being a very popular website, and also, therefore, there's been a backlash to the kind of the local news type clickbait stories. Do we think that actually this is an inevitable consequence of access to social media by people who are able to basically put out unfiltered rumours with little chance of there being any comeback, but also to do with the way in which things are reported in the modern footballing world, in a way that actually journalists working for The Athletic, you can sense the freedom they have and the fact that they're able to have that little bit of extra time and energy to put out well-researched and evaluated stories rather than just throwing something out there to get the clicks and the advertising revenue.
Yeah, I think you're seeing, almost a polarisation of these different types of journalism now, with The Athletic moving towards maybe a bit more old-fashioned journalism in the sense that it's well-researched, there's plenty of time and care that goes into the stories they produce, and the journos seem to really, be thriving on that atmosphere now. Whereas, someone like Paul Taylor, who had been working for The Post, which has sadly become very clickbaity.
Name a local news website that hasn't.
No, that's it.
Well, they're all pretty much owned by the same couple of companies, aren't they? So they're
it's just people just anyway on social media and can just put whatever they want out there, and it doesn't get challenged enough. There's a hell of a lot of, to use a famous phrase, fake news out there. So it's good to see that people are cutting through that now, and you've got players who are stamping down rumours, and you've got people who are actually seeking out reliable, trusted journalism and sources of journalism.
Okay, well, so on that note, let's just take a break from all of this and let's listen to something else.
The Forest Ramble sketch by Jeremy Davis. Football is the ultimate spectator sport. In the same way that if a tree falls in the forest and there's no one there to see it, it can be said to have not really happened. So, if a stadium full of fans turn up to watch a football match and no football match takes place, then are those spectators even really there? It's something Forest fans had reason to ponder recently when the match against Reading was called off, after the pitch was found to be better suited to water polo than football. Wasn't even the most controversial weather-related story involving the Royals in recent months. What with Prince Harry attempting to save the planet and solve the climate crisis, all from the comfort of his private jet. Rain and football go together like chips and curry sauce, in that apply a light sprinkling and you get a slick and delectable feast for all the senses, but add too much and you end up with a soggy mess that may end up getting binned altogether. Matches abandoned due to the weather are a relatively regular occurrence in these isles. Whether it's rain, snow or fog, the elements continue to have a periodic impact on the league table. Sometimes matches do get abandoned or called off for more unusual reasons. In 1985, Oldham Athletics' home fixture with Sheffield United was abandoned after an unexploded World War II bomb was discovered adjacent to the pitch. Write your own jokes here about wingers bombing up and down the touchline. Floodlight failures are always good fun, if only because they seem so ridiculous at multi-million-pound football clubs. How many footballers does it take to change a light bulb? In 1997, Frank Lampard lost a goal to technology back in the good old days when VAR was just a twinkle in Sepp Blatter's eye. When the floodlights failed, just after he'd scored an equaliser for West Ham at home to Crystal Palace. Of course, more precious to Forest fans is the memory of Derby County's first ever match at the brand new Pride Park, which was abandoned after the lights went out on their home match with Wimbledon 11 minutes into the second half. My personal favourite, though, is the sorry tale of the Gloucestershire club Soudley, whose home fixture with Charfield was abandoned after wild boar invaded the pitch leaving it covered in potholes and pig manure. Rumour has it that so impressed was the watching Toady Pulis with the havoc wrought in the opposition penalty area by the boss hog that he tried to sign him up on the spot to play at centre forward. The swine could not be reached for comment, but he seemed as happy as a pig in
Welcome back to the Forest Ramble podcast. The month started badly. We've been able to, because of the Nations League, football has a different format now, domestic football in the top two divisions, where you have a month and then you have a break. And Lamouchi has actually really done what I think is a very good job in terms of using that to manage the way he's approaching the league. So he's saying, let's take it each kind of segment, each month-long segment as a chapter in itself. And that seemed to work quite well. But is there an argument, Stephen, that the international break last month came at the wrong time and disrupted our momentum? Because when we came back, we were stuttering badly.
Yeah, that is always the problem with international breaks. They do sometimes come at the wrong time. You will have your months where you've probably had a bad run and you think, oh God, let's get to the break and let's regroup. But then when you're on a good run of form, you don't want that to stop. So, yeah, I think that did have an effect. I think also the manager of the month curse for Sabri. First game after he's won it, we lose. So, you know, that came back to haunt us again. But yeah, maybe it did just halt that bit of momentum and, you know, that good form that we'd built up over the previous six to 8 weeks where, you know, we'd only lost on the opening day of the season and then it was just an unbeaten run straight after that for a good 10, 12 games.
Married on the Midlands, just as a counter-argument, I'm going to say that actually, having said that, during those international breaks, that's when the manager, in some ways, earns his money because he gets a chance to do stuff on the training ground. He gets a chance to experiment with the players and the tactics and the formations. And yet, when we came back against Wigan, it really didn't work, did it?
No, I got the sense that he maybe overthought it a bit too much and was being a bit too clever for his own good. I think he made too many changes for that game. Probably should have just gone strongest team. Let's get back.
So what would that strongest team have looked like?
It would have
compared to...
Well, it probably would have had Grabban in it and Silva.
But
and
3 matches in a week for Grabban. He's a player who's just touching 32. Can you understand why he chose not to play Grabban in all 3 matches, even though 2 of them, one of them didn't happen?
Yeah, I can understand it, but I would always go strongest first, get the win, and then take him off with 20 minutes to go, maybe. And even the changes he made, they weren't necessarily all terrible. There's logic behind playing Mir up front. It's unfortunate that he did change the personnel and the formation at the same time, and I think that didn't help the players coming in so much either. If it had been the same usual formation, so Lolly knew what he was doing, he was playing out wide, Amiobi knew what he was doing, playing out wide, and we had, say, Bostock playing the Samba Sow role and Mir playing up front, I think it would have helped because it would have been less disruption. Just changing the formation around, changing the personnel around, having Ribeiro in midfield rather than an actual attacking midfielder. Yeah. All the little things sort of contributed in just disrupting everything and making it a stuttery performance.
And I think it's fair to say that in the Wigan match, now I wasn't there, but in the Wigan match, by all accounts, it was probably the weakest performance of the season, the least coherent performance of the season.
Yeah, but having said, they still could have easily won it.
Isn't that because Wigan are very good?
They're not very good, but they created chances. I mean, Mir got into a couple of good opportunities. He was a classic striker, trying too hard, snatching at his chances, and knowing that this was his one and only opportunity, and he's going to be back on the bench. We've seen it over the years so many times with so many different strikers. When
Robert Rosario, Eugene Daddy,
I think that's unfair that you put him in that.
Now, so I've said this before, and I'll quite happily say it again. So in the League Cup match against Derby County, Rafa Mir, he had a wonderful chance that's set up for him by Brennan Johnson. It was actually a very good save, low down, by Ben Hamer in the goal. I think if that chance had gone in, Rafa Mir would be champion at the bit, would actually be potentially challenging Lewis Grabban as for a place in the team a bit more often. sometimes a player just needs one of those chances to go in.
The thing with strikers is that he got into the position. That's the most important thing, because that shows he's got that bit of knowledge, that bit of ability to know how to score goals.
And the instinct.
Yeah, the instinct. And he just snatched them. And Bostock got criticised as well, but he was doing okay. He was disrupting Wigan's play. He played some good passes through. The pass for Mears' chance just before both of them went off was brilliant. If he just put it across the goalkeeper instead of snatching at it, it would have been a very different story.
That's a young player with very limited first team experience snatching at a chance. Actually, yesterday's goal, we discussed it in the match report, but Lewis Graben, he had that chance, but in his post-match interview, he said, I had a few seconds to kind of look up and think about what I was doing. He didn't use those exact words, but he was basically, time slowed down for him, and he's able to decide what he was going to do, pick his spot, and it made it look easy. Yeah. Whereas Rafa Mir is making things look difficult because he's snatching at it. Actually, time speeds up and he panics a little bit. And that happens, like you say, we've seen it happen with so many strikers at Forest, at other clubs, at international level.
It's happening at Newcastle at the moment with Joe Linton and Almiron. Is it the Paraguayan guy?
And Sam Maximin.
Yeah, and also at West Ham, the guy Haller they brought in from West Ham, from Germany. They just clearly just need a bit of confidence, of a few goals to get them going, and you can see their abilities there.
And it's archetypal. If it just hits them on the backside and goes in, then actually all of a sudden they suddenly regain belief, and they also, with that belief, comes that ability to slow down time. It's interesting that apparently Mesut Ozil's autobiography, he says that quite explicitly about when he's on form and he's confident, and he makes this explicit. When he's confident, it's like the world slows down. So he has set extra few seconds to be able to pick the pass, to be able to decide where he's going to shoot, to decide how he's going to take on his defender. But when he's not confident, then everything goes too quickly, and therefore by the time he's thought about it, the ball's gone. And which is actually, for a player who gets so much stick, and unfairly so in my opinion, but Arsenal's a subject for another podcast somewhere else, I think. But for a player who gets so much stick, I think that was refreshingly honest and open about the difficulties of playing at a very high level. Yeah,
it's just classic sort of play for a striker. The best ones make it look easy.
Lewis
Graben, yeah, and it comes. It's confidence, it's experience, it's all those things.
Okay,
but he's got just to
go on.
Carry on with Mir. He has got that potential to be a really, really good striker. Like I say, it just needs a chance to fall his way. A very simple goal that just gets him off the mark and up and running. Because between now and the end of the season, we might have to rely on him for certain points. Because obviously, touch wood, hopefully Graben stays fit for the whole season, and we don't have to worry about that. But we did lose Graben last year, and the team did suffer for it.
And the sarcastic applause when he went off and cheers, I thought that was disgusting.
Well, I mean, the analogy I've always used is if you've got a small child who's learning to walk, if they fall over, do you laugh in their face, or do you say, get up and have another go? I know we're talking about grown men here, but actually, if you've got 30,000 people kind of barracking you, it's going to have an effect, isn't it, Tom Lawrence? So what I'll also like to talk about is tactics. So you say that you think that Sabri overthought it a little bit, and I actually think that looking at the tactics since the whole match, he's almost brought it back to basics. So he said, all right, we're going to make the midfield solid, and then we're going to rely upon the wide players. So actually playing Yuri Ribeiro at fullback with Amiobi in front of him, playing Mati Castro, Joe Lolly in front of him, means that the players now, we might have Tiago Silva orchestrating things in midfield, but actually the chances and the ability to kind of take on the defenders is coming from the wide positions, whereas when we had Samba Sow available or Alpha Semedo at certain points, we're able to bring it forward, driving through the midfield. So I think tactically he's almost taken it back a step and said, let's do the solid thing and then use the wingers.
I don't know why he had to change it, really, because I thought we'd stumbled across a brilliant concept for how to play. For me, you'd always have...
I can tell you in 2 words, Sal's injured.
I suppose so. I thought we were too open in that whole game. I don't think you could ever play Carvalho and Silva in the same midfield when starting off a match. Maybe when you're chasing it right at the end of a game and you need a goal from something, but starting off, I think it almost smacks of sort of underestimating the opposition slightly.
I think, in fairness, I think that Hull surprised us. I think that they changed their formation slightly, which meant that they were playing with a number 10 in John Terrell. And that actually unlocked the door for, we knew that they had amazing wingers, and their wingers are probably the two best informed wingers in the league at the moment. And that's what really did for us. There was a catalogue of things going wrong there. And I think it's not unreasonable that Lamouchi didn't anticipate the fact that they would play John Terrell as an advanced number 10, almost as a second striker at times, which meant that Tiago Silva's position in the deep lying midfield role was perhaps a bit ill thought out. And so when we were able to bring on Yates later in the match, that made a significant difference. And it's no surprise that it wasn't just a game of two halves. It was actually, when Yates came on, Forest were able, 2 goals down, but were able to then make a challenge. So we had the Reading postponement, and there's another great example of people going crazy on social media for no reason as well. It was pretty much biblical before the Reading match.
Yeah, damned if they do, damned if they don't, aren't they, the club? So,
well, have you seen the footage of the referee doing the pitch inspection where the ball just goes splat and stops dead?
Yeah, you're going to upset people either way if you have to postpone the match.
And you do feel sorry because obviously if you're travelling, whether you're a home fan or as an away fan, then you can't get that money or time back. And it's a bit of a wasted journey.
But the biggest cost is to the club. They would have lost the most amount of money from that. And I don't know if it is possible. People are talking about covers on Twitter.
But there's nowhere for the water to go.
No, I know. Yeah. I don't know if there is. I mean, because it costs them a couple of £100,000 every time a match is postponed. Maybe there is. I don't know if there is such a system, but maybe there's some sort of water pumping system where they can get, like, I know they do use them for cricket pitches, but a cricket pitch is a lot smaller than a football pitch. I don't know if you could.
Well, yeah, and they also only cover a small percentage. They cover.
I don't know if there is such a system in existence where you could cover a whole football field and then pump it out somewhere into the river or something. I don't know.
The whole point is the river was too high, so the water table was brought up. Yeah. Now, short of building the city ground 6 foot higher than it currently is, which would mean the people on the first few rows wouldn't be very happy, then I don't see what solution there is.
I don't know if there is a realistic solution for it. We're just going to have to accept that once in a while we're going to have to.
It's just the way it goes. And how often do we get matches postponed?
Once a season, I suppose.
Yeah. If that.
Yeah.
Hi, it's Audra,
Jason, and Matt
from Drinkopedia Podcast.
We're a bad education podcast that's like drunk history for the full curriculum.
We have new episodes every Thursday, and you can find us on most major podcast platforms.
Join us at the bar and follow us on Twitter at DrinkopediaPod.
Forest have got... Now, I've never really understood this whole expected goals, XG thing, but Forest have got one of the lowest XG ratings of any team in the top half of the division, and yet Forest are, at the time of recording, 5th in the table, very close to being in a position to challenge possibly for the top 2. Is that low expected goal ratio something that you worry about?
It can be, because you want to see the team creating chances and scoring as many goals as they can to win games. But the flip side of that is Forest are winning games. Forest don't look like losing games either. You know, they look very strong and very competitive. So if they're not scoring that many goals, it doesn't matter, because it's not as if they're conceding loads or losing games because of it. They're winning games, and they are very clinical as a team. Very clinical.
I have the counter view that the XG is just a measure of the quality of chances you're creating. So a low one. So if you have like a 0.2 XG, you're not expected to score a goal really. Whereas if you've got a 3.6, you're expected to score about 3 goals in a game. So it is, for me, it is a slight worry, because when we've gone behind in, say, Wigan and Hull, we've lost those games. So we're not scoring many goals.
You just said earlier that against Wigan, we had the chances to get back in the match.
But we didn't. We haven't created loads of chances. I'm looking back, we've beaten Derby 1-0, Barnsley 1-0. Swansea 1-0, Brentford 1-0. Eventually, it's going to maybe trip us up, that sort of thing, because we're not creating many chances, and we maybe go 1-0 down, 2-0 down, we're going to struggle. Traditionally, the teams that get promoted do score a lot of goals.
Okay, now
so
let me give you a counter argument there. Then Leeds create a lot more chances and don't take many of them, and so therefore they're winning matches 1-0 or just scraping those victories. Which is better, to be creating chances and not having the ability to take them, or to be creating fewer chances and having the ability to take them?
In an ideal world, you'd want to create a lot of chances and take them.
That wasn't an option.
Neither of them are an ideal, because just say if you don't create that, what happens is when you miss those chances, say as happened at Wigan, you lose because you're only creating 2 or 3 chances a game, and you don't take them, you've lost the game. So we do need to. It's something we can. But I think that's on the flip side. That's a hopeful sign for us, because we haven't played brilliantly well going attack wise. So that for me says that we've got a lot of room for improvement. So when we do start creating chances, hopefully we're going to sort of score a lot more goals and be a lot more comfortable in matches.
Stephen, do you think Sabri is bothered about the XG rating?
I think he'll just be bothered about the results and getting those 3 points every week. And I think the Derby game's a good example, because I saw some Derby fans after the match on their forums complaining or, saying, well, we had more of the ball and perhaps should have done more in the game, should have got a point, should have won it because of that. But it doesn't work that way. And Forest don't need to have 65, 70% possession to control a game or to win a game, because they look comfortable in matches to a degree where you think, yeah, they could get something out of this. They're not being outplayed. They're not not at the same level as the opponents. They're very every game they're competitive, but they're giving as good as they get, and they're creating. They are creating chances.
I think that's important. They haven't been outplayed in any match this season. There've been spells where they've been outplayed. So.
But they always seem to come back when they've had those, like you say, those spells where they have been outplayed. They've normally then in the same game, if they haven't been outplaying the opposition, they will do that. They'll have their spells. So that for me is. But
I'm not sure, but I'm not sure that's by design that they're not creating lots of chances. I just don't think they've done it through a lack of good quality attacking play. I think ideally Sabri does want to create a lot more chances. It can bite you in the bum if you're not creating them, or if you're only going to get 2 chances every game, and you miss those, you're a bit snookered.
Well, I mean, the question being, of course, is that we have the problem that Graben is the master goal scorer, and he's experienced and he's on form, and when he gets a chance he looks like he will hit the target or score more often than he doesn't. Obviously there is that conundrum, what happens if something happens to Graben, because we know that other players won't necessarily have the ability to do that. And I agree with you. I think that ideally, we would be creating more chances, and interestingly, looking at Sammy Omiobi, he had 2 or 3 sort of chances, which I guess would go down as low quality chances, where he was on the edge of the box and had a speculative shot. Now, actually, in a way, that's a sign that Sammy Omiobi is a League One winger, isn't it? Because it's like he kind of bamboozles his player, doesn't quite know what to do with it, just thinks, oh, I'll have a pop.
But I don't mind that. I don't mind them having a shot, because I think we've been reluctant to do that at times this season. Just have a go from sort of the edge of the box. It can sort of spill out. And
that's where Lolly gets a lot of his goals as well, from that kind of play.
And let me put it another way, though, is that I'm less concerned about it under Lamouchi than I was under Karanka, where it didn't, because we had a very static midfield then. It didn't, and we were very reliant upon Carvalho and Lolly at various points. It didn't really look as though we had many ways to unlock opposition teams.
I agree. I think that's the going back to the point of where we can improve still. There's a lot of room for improvement, because you've got players like Semedo, Silva, Carvalho, who all look like they've got goals in them if they've sort of given chances to score. So, in that respect, I agree with you. Yeah, compared to this time last year, we probably are looking a bit more dangerous.
And also, I think you have to give a shout out to Matty Cash. Some of his movement on the right hand side is so good. yesterday against Derby, he was making runs. Sometimes they weren't always being picked out, but making dangerous runs and dangerous moves down that right-hand side, which really threatened to cause Derby problems. And his attacking skills are a real asset from right back.
And I would say that at the moment we've got the two best attacking fullbacks we've had at the club in Ribeiro and Cash that we've had since Luis
Ribeiro was brilliant against Luton. He was I just think
he's a brilliant player, and I think Jack Robinson's a perfectly decent Championship left back, but Ribeiro's just looked a cut above, especially in terms of his ability to go forward, and he's not scared of getting back and making a tackle.
Yeah.
He's also less likely to get booked every match, which is another matter. Now, talking about players, one thing that's really come across is that the players really care. We were talking, Baz and I were talking about that in terms of the reaction of the players and the manager following the Derby match. The fact that every time there's a match, you've got your core of kind of, I suppose, in inverted commas, local lads, your academy products. So you've got Worrell, Cash, Yates, Dawson when he's playing. We've got those players who are really, really absolutely loving it and showing the fans their appreciation. Of course, you've got Samba, who's not a local lad. Incidentally, as an aside, my friend who sits very low down in the Brian Clough lower in the whole match said that Samba can definitely speak English and he definitely knows all the words as she and her daughter were like listening to him giving a mouthful to one of the whole players. That thing about his English not being very good, he knows enough. But in the post-match interviews, Worrell and Graben straight away ran away and they just ran off to show their appreciation to the fans. There's that video on social media of Worrell orchestrating the fans in the beer cellar. And Lolly and Cash really kind of playing up on that as well. Joe Worrell, in his interviews, he's kind of saying a lot about how it's an open division and the players actually have that belief. I don't think I've seen that level of belief in a Forest team for many, many years. Not since Billy Davis.
Yeah, but it's going to be similar for about a dozen clubs at the moment. I think after that little stutter we had against Hull and Wigan, we saw how quickly we sort of fell down the table a little bit. So I think every club in that top half of the table is going to be sort of feeling that it's their year because it is so close. And but West Brom look like they're going to be relentless and just manage to grind out wins week in, week out. But and Leeds are brilliant at what they do. But it's so open and so similar.
So the question being, I suppose, is will either of those teams, and indeed will Forest, run out of steam? Leeds, obviously, Bielsa teams generally have form for stuttering in the last third of the season because they're basically knackered. Do we think that Forest have got a realistic prospect of, first of all, playoffs? Stephen?
Based on what I've seen so far, yes.
Meriden Midlands?
Yes, although I had a look back at this time last year and we were pretty much in the same position. Having just beaten Sheffield United, who were top of the league, we were very optimistic, and we were fifth, and we were like 4 points off the top of the division. So yes, but with a caution there, because it.
But haven't we just discussed that Forest look more dynamic this
season? We do, but I don't want to jinx it.
Okay, so then, same question, but top two, automatic promotion. Is that a prospect, Stephen?
Right now, no. But if we're in the same position in January, a couple of points off, in the position to then go and strengthen in the January window, then yes, potentially it could.
I think I agree. I think a lot depends on keeping Graben fit between now and January, and then seeing if we can add somebody to help him out in January.
So one of the things that is, it's interesting actually, because people talk about the transfer window in January as if it's some kind of panacea for all ills, but obviously if you're struggling, then what you're trying to do is you're trying to get in players who are better than the ones you've already got, and it can be disruptive. The only way to use a January transfer window wisely is if you are strengthening from a position of strength. So I personally think that the idea of keeping up the momentum is massively important, because then if we sign another striker, and I don't necessarily believe that Dwight Guile is the answer, despite the fact that lots of people seem to be going crazy.
I don't think we'd get him. I think there'd be other clubs in for him who could offer him more money.
Yeah, it's money, but also I'd rather have Graben I think they're two sides of the same coin. They're both players who are very good at this level at taking chances in the box, and if we've got both of them, then one of them's going to be unhappy every match.
Yeah.
So if we get a striker in, they've got to be someone who adds to the squad rather than just being there to plug a gap in a team. Are there any other positions that we need to strengthen, Stephen?
I look at potentially the midfield, just having one or two extra bodies in there. I know we've got quite a few already, but I would like to see a quite dynamic kind of midfielder. Somebody like we're not going to get him, but a Romain Sawyers kind of player who's got that little bit of both, that bit of that, who can just cover that area between both boxes and be a real driving force in there. I'm not saying to be a first choice, but just to add a little bit more competition, particularly if the fixtures build up and, you know, you might be having to rotate a little bit. I would also say if this probably counts more as a forward strengthening position rather than midfield, but looking at wingers as well, maybe. I know we've got Adoma, we've got Lolly and Amiobi, maybe one more in there just to offer something different. Also, I think to take a little bit of pressure off Lolly, because his form hasn't been at the same level as it was last season. I don't know if that's down to teams know who he is now, so they're really doubling up their efforts to keep him quiet, or if it's just the way we play perhaps doesn't bring out, you know, those moments of individual brilliance.
Or is it that he's no longer the focal point of everything Forest do? Because last season, at times, it was give the ball to Lolly and watch him go and see if he can create something. Whereas now, we've got more outlets. So I don't know if, you know, that's a bit of a counter-argument, I guess. But
yeah, and I think the thing is, you can't really second-guess what our recruitment department's going to do, because they brought in a centre-back when you thought we had loads of centre-backs in Chima. So you don't know if they might just if they see an opportunity who might progress, not necessarily straight away, but in a year or so, they might bring somebody in. But I wouldn't want to disrupt it too much. I think we just need that sort of cherry on the icing on the cake at the moment. I think we've got plenty of bodies in there. It's just that striking department where the club know they sort of failed in the summer to bring somebody. They were trying hard, and hopefully they've done all their homework. They've got a target in mind, and it's all lined up, and they can bring somebody in. It might be from the Portuguese second division again. You don't know, somebody we've never heard of, the French second division, but just it would be good.
Well, that's the other reason why I don't think it's going to be Guile, because we can probably get a better deal with the scouting network that we have, and the fact that they are looking to, they've got a good network overseas. So I think that there would be another striker out there who would probably cost less money, who would add to the squad rather than being a stopgap. You mentioned about Chema. Just very briefly, an interesting one that while Michael Dawson's been out injured, we've not had a regular stand-in. We've rotated between Tobias Figueiredo and Chema. Slightly unusual there, Stephen. What do you make of that?
It seems as if Sabri's picking the right player for the right type of game. So it went with Toby against Derby, but then Chema's come in for certain games as well, and Worrell's been the constant.
Chema and Figueiredo are kind of quite different types of players. What I like is that Chema's always looking for a fight. I always like that in a centre half. But I really like the way that Figueiredo is kind of quite. He's no nonsense, and again, Paul Taylor was saying he's actually much more like an English centre back in that way. In that he'll want to do the simple things and then worry about the rest later.
Yeah. I've always been impressed with Figueiredo. He's just such a tough guy. He reminds me of like a mafia enforcer in a gangster film. He's just got that look about it. You can just see him sort of chewing on a toothpick and sort of battering somebody. But yeah, it's odd. You don't see that very often. The managers generally tend to like a stable back four. But yeah, I think Stephen's exactly right. The manager has tried to sort of pick a team for the opposition where maybe you expect to have more of the ball. Chema's come in, and where he's expecting a tough sort of battle, Figueiredo's come in. But they've both done well, and it augurs well for the future.